Hello there and welcome. Tonight, allow me to take your hand and lead you softly and slowly into the quieter folds of time, into the forgotten kitchens and forgotten stomachs of ancient Egypt. Here, the wind carries the smell of smoke and fermentation, not perfumes or incense. Here, the grandeur of pyramids fades into the hum of hunger. As the night deepens and your body grows still, we'll slip together into a lullaby of history. A tale not of kings or gods, but of daily meals and why in the heart of one of the world's most celebrated civilizations, food was often a bitter disappointment. So settle in, close your eyes if you'd like, and let us begin. Let us begin in the soft light of dawn. The Nile gleams like a silver ribbon, mist curling along its surface as the sun yawns above the horizon. The land is quiet, cool, for now, the hush before the heat sets in. In the distance, a farmer's wife steps from her modest mud-brick home. Her hair is tied back, her feet bare, her body already tense with the weight of the day's work. She is one of millions whose life unfolds far from temples and tombs. She is not remembered in scrolls or honoured in songs, but she knows the value of a loaf of bread and the pain of making it. This is where our story begins. Not in the pharaoh's palace, not in golden sarcophagi, but at the grindstone. The woman kneels before the heavy stone slab, adjusting her rough linen garment. In her hands is a flat piece of basalt, the quern, and beside her, a bowl of emmer wheat. The grains are thick and hard, far different from our soft modern wheat. She pours a little onto the slab and begins to grind, pushing and pulling the quern with a rhythm carved into her bones from childhood. It is loud, scraping stone on stone, grit echoing through the air. It takes hours. Her arms ache. Her back curves like a bow. By midday, the flour is ready, but it is not clean. Tiny fragments of stone have broken off from the grindstone. Microscopic pieces, sharp and fine, now live within the flour. They will not be sifted out. There is no sieve fine enough. They will be baked into the bread, and they will be eaten. The ancient Egyptians did not know it, but they were slowly grinding down their own teeth, day after day, year after year. When mummies are unwrapped today, archaeologists find teeth worn almost to the gums. Some have abscesses, exposed nerves, infected roots. Pain, constant and dull, was a companion to every bite. Eating was survival, but it was rarely pleasant. And bread was unavoidable. It was the core of every meal. Round loaves, thick slabs, baked in conical moulds placed in hot ash. The bread was dense, chewy and sour, made with wild yeasts and unmeasured hands. It did not rise well. It often did not bake evenly. The crust was charred, the centre damp. Sometimes bits of charcoal or ash from the fire clung to the bottom. Sometimes bits of insects too. In the open air of the Nile Delta, flies and beetles were constant companions. Still, they ate. What choice did they have? Bread was more than food. It was currency. Wages for labourers were paid in bread and beer. A man working on a noble's tomb might receive 5 loaves a day, enough to feed himself and perhaps one other. No coins, no gold, just bread. Even in temples, offerings to the gods came in the form of bread pyramids, and in the afterlife, tombs depicted endless loaves for the dead to enjoy. Whether real or symbolic, bread was life. Bread was everything, but it was never delicious. Let's follow our woman again. With her basket of raw flour, she walks to the clay oven, already hot from the morning sun. She mixes the flour with water. There are no spices, no oils. Perhaps a little salt if the household can spare it. Maybe a handful of wild herbs if the season is kind. She kneads with her fists, elbows deep in the sticky dough. There is no yeast to sprinkle in. She relies on the wild microbes clinging to the air, to her skin, to the bowl. Some days the bread rises. Other days it ferments too far and collapses. She does not waste it. Nothing is wasted. Even sour, even misshapen, it must be eaten. In the heat of the oven the dough hardens. Cracks form on the crust. Smoke curls into the sky. Her children wait nearby, their stomachs already grumbling. It is not hunger as we know it, a skipped meal or two. It is a slow, constant emptiness woven into the fabric of life. When the bread is done, it is cracked and blackened. She breaks it open. Steam rises. The smell is familiar, earthy, slightly sour, slightly bitter. Her children grab pieces with dirty hands and eat without waiting. Crumbs fall to the ground. She watches them chew. And she knows tomorrow she must do it all again. Meanwhile, a few miles away, a scribe in the service of a minor nobleman sits beneath a shaded veranda, a clay tablet in hand. He has access to finer things, white bread made from more carefully sifted wheat, baked in moulds shaped like birds or stars. Still, the sand is there. The grit remains. His wealth affords him spices, a sprinkle of coriander, a bit of cumin, maybe even honey if the bees have been generous. But these are rare. Luxuries. He writes of taxes, of granaries, of bread deliveries. He does not write of taste, for even he, in his modest comfort, knows the truth. Food in Egypt was functional, predictable, ritualized, and largely flavorless. Yet their culture was deeply tied to it. Bread and beer were symbolic of life itself. Their creation was sacred. Priests oversaw their preparation for the gods. Recipes were etched onto tomb walls, not because they were delicious, but because they were essential, sustaining, and still, for all their reverence, the food itself was never good. Not by our standards, not even, it seems, by theirs. It is here, in this strange contradiction, that our story blooms. Why did a civilization so devoted to agriculture, so wealthy in river-fed abundance, never master the art of flavour? Why did the meals of the poor grind their teeth to dust? Why did the meals of the rich still cause illness? Why did food suck in ancient Egypt? The answers lie scattered in crumbling scrolls, in desiccated intestines, in the ghostly sigh of a woman grinding grain at dawn. And if we listen closely, if we quiet our minds, we can still hear her breath, the scrape of stone, the ache of labour. Part by part, we will uncover her world. Gently, slowly, one mouthful of history at a time. The sun is higher now. Its light, once golden and gentle, now beats down on the Nile Valley with steady insistence. The heat wraps itself around everything, the fields, the bricks, the skin. There is no wind, just the hush of sweat forming, of cicadas whirring in distant reeds. The river glistens, a serpent under the sky, and life pulses alongside it, rhythmic, unchanging. In the shade of a date palm, an old man sits, chewing slowly on a piece of bread. He does not savour it. He consumes it the way one swallows a stone, out of obligation. His eyes squint toward the field where his sons are bending over rows of barley. Their backs are curved, their hands thick with dirt, the same tasks he once performed, and his father before him, and so on, for as long as the Nile has known names. But the bread, it is worse now. His tongue rubs against the rough crust, already raw from yesterday's meal. He pulls a pebble from his molar with the flick of a fingernail. He knows it's not a pebble, not really, just another chip of basalt or granite from the grindstone. He doesn't complain. Complaining doesn't soften bread, it only sours the day. His wife back at home is boiling lentils. The pot simmers on 3 stones, flames licking beneath. The water drawn from a nearby canal is cloudy. She had to strain it through woven reeds, hoping it was enough. Parasites, if swallowed, don't declare themselves for days, but she has no other choice. The pot bubbles with a thick, dull consistency. Brown, pungent. She adds onions, sharp and burning to the eyes, and a pinch of salt saved from last week. This will be dinner. Barley bread and lentil stew, the same as yesterday, the same as tomorrow. And yet, it was this monotony that kept the world turning. It fed the builders of pyramids. It nourished the scribes, the soldiers, the fishermen, and the priests. But nourish is a generous word. The calories sustained the body, yes, but did little else. Let us drift now into the cool interior of a temple. The stone is cool underfoot. The incense burns, thick and perfumed. Statues loom in alcoves, eyes gazing into eternity. In the back chamber, hidden from the common gaze, a priest oversees an offering table. Laid upon it are loaves of bread, cooked fish, onions, beer, and dates. It seems abundant, it seems luxurious, but it is all illusion. The bread is stale by the time it reaches the gods. The fish, cooked hours ago, begins to spoil in the heat. The beer is warm and sour, buzzing faintly with flies. The priest waves them away absently as he chants. He is not hungry. He has eaten already. A small meal, a slice of bread, a fig, a sip of wine. Not because he preferred simplicity, but because his stomach would not tolerate more. And therein lies another truth, buried beneath the reverence. Food in ancient Egypt made people sick, often. The very staples of their diet, bread and beer, were culprits. The bread, filled with sand and unprocessed grains, wore down teeth, inflamed gums, and irritated stomachs. The beer, brewed in open air with wild yeasts and stored in clay jars, was prone to contamination. Without controlled temperatures, bacterial growth flourished. Medical papyri from the time speak of stomach ailments, vomiting, bloating, worms of the belly. The prescriptions are revealing: chewed herbs, honey mixtures, animal dung, remedies passed down not because they worked, but because they were familiar. The rich had more to eat, certainly, but not necessarily better. Meat was rare, even for the nobility. A leg of lamb, a roasted duck, these were delicacies, eaten during festivals, feasts, or funerals, preserved in tombs, depicted in art, remembered in prayers, but seldom served at the evening table. Most protein came from beans, lentils, or fish. And even fish, once abundant in the Nile, could be dangerous if eaten fresh. Often they were dried in the sun, covered in salt. The result was hard, chewy, and intensely briny. One had to soak the flesh in water for hours to remove the salt. And even then, it often smelled off. And yet, fish remained a pillar of the diet. A humble fisherman might bring home a bucket of bulti, the ancient ancestor of tilapia, and his wife would slice and gut them, tossing the waste to waiting cats. But without lemon, without herbs, without oil, the flavour was simple to the point of punishment. Some attempted to disguise it. Garlic, pounded and raw, added a punch of sharpness. Leeks, boiled and mashed, offered a bitter edge, but none of these were flavours as we know them. Harmonised, balanced, layered, they were simply loud. One-note answers to a question of taste that no one could afford to ask. Even the spices of the rich, cumin, coriander, cinnamon, were used sparingly. Imported at great cost, they were measured by the pinch. A small bowl of spiced lentils might appear at a noble's feast, its aroma sweet and complex. But this was theatre, a once-in-a-month event. The daily fare returned soon enough to its grey, flavourless reality. In one household, across the river, a scribe records his meals. He keeps a personal journal. Clay tablets stacked carefully in the corner. He is precise in language, detailed in memory. And in the margins of his entries he notes his complaints. Bread, coarse again, wife overbaked it, my molars ache. Fish, sour, belly pain after supper. Beer was cloudy, vomited by the evening. His words are quiet, private. He would never speak them aloud. To do so would invite judgment, ungratefulness. But his honesty seeps through the clay. He lives well by the standards of the time. But he dreams of food in his sleep, not because he is hungry, but because he wants to remember the taste of something good. He once tasted honeyed cakes at a temple festival. Small, soft rounds made from fine flour, soaked in honey and baked over hot stones, sweet, warm, moist. He remembers that day clearly, the crowd, the music, the brief, shining joy of taste. He never had one again. Most never had one at all. And so, as the sun tilts westward, casting long shadows across the fields and walls, Egypt eats again, slowly, mechanically. Bread and lentils, beer and fish, the cycle repeats. The taste fades, but the hunger remains. The evening falls quietly over the Nile. The sky softens from a blazing gold to muted lilac, and then slips into a deeper blue. The heat loosens its grip. Shadows stretch and fade. From the rooftop of a modest home in Memphis, a family gathers under the stars. The day's work is done, but rest has not yet arrived. The air smells faintly of clay, sweat, and smouldering embers. At the centre of their circle sits a worn clay bowl. Inside, lentils, mashed and thick. Beside it, rounds of barley bread, cold now, cracked from the dry wind, slightly burnt around the edges. The father dips his bread into the bowl, tearing it with his fingers. The children do the same. No utensils, no plates, no extravagance, no joy either. There is no celebration in this meal. It is the same as the night before, and the one before that. Perhaps if fortune had smiled that day, a date or two might have sweetened the end of the meal. But not tonight, not this time. The mother chews slowly, her thoughts elsewhere. Her back aches. She wonders if the grain will last until the next flood, if the millstones need replacing, if the water will be safe tomorrow. She remembers how her own mother used to boil reeds and call it soup. She prays it won't come to that again. The youngest child, barely 6, grimaces as he bites into the bread. It's too hard. He tries to chew, but gives up, pushing the crust aside. His gums are sore. His teeth already show wear, a future written in stone, passed down like an heirloom. Let us drift now into the night to another corner of this vast land, a wealthy estate near the outskirts of Heliopolis. The house is quiet, but lit. Inside, a nobleman reclines on a cushioned bench. Before him is a platter, carefully arranged by servants. It holds things most Egyptians will never see. There is roasted goose, the skin dark and crisp. Beside it, figs sliced in halves, their soft insides gleaming in the flickering lamplight. A A small bowl of fermented fish paste rests at the edge of the tray, its smell sharp and pungent. For dessert, honey cakes, dense, sticky, fragrant with sesame. But even here, where luxury is abundant, the truth whispers through the seams. The goose has sat too long under the warm air, the skin has gone leathery, the meat is tough, not tender, the figs are overly ripe, bordering on spoiled. The fish paste was imported weeks ago, carried in jars by donkey caravan across burning sands. Its preservation is uncertain, and the nobleman is not well. He reclines, yes, but with a hand pressed against his side. His stomach churns. He winces between bites. The physician told him to eat less fatty meat to avoid dried fish, but he craves variety in a world that offers so little of it. He can't bear another plate of lentils, another cup of cloudy beer, so he indulges. And suffers. In the corner, a servant waits silently. She has eaten nothing since morning. As she watches him chew, her own belly growls softly. She dares not look at the platter too long. Back in the city, under the veil of night, street vendors pack away their goods. Baskets of onions, bunches of green garlic, clay jars half filled with sour beer. The scent of old oil and smoke still lingers in the air. One man wipes his brow, exhausted. He made little profit that day. Too many mouths, not enough coin. He remembers a dream he once had, to open a tavern by the river, to serve meals with actual flavour, to invent new recipes. But the dream faded. There is no demand for invention in a land where food is survival. People do not pay for flavour. They pay for fullness, and even fullness is not guaranteed. At the Temple of Ptah, a feast is being prepared for a ritual ceremony. The priests and their helpers move through the sacred halls, carrying trays of offerings. Loaves of fine white bread made from carefully sieved emmer flour, cuts of beef, rare and tender, fresh grapes, raisins, almonds. The food is meant for the gods, but the priests will partake after the rite is complete. It is a rare indulgence. But even here, in the hallowed halls of worship, illness seeps in. One priest, older than the rest, avoids the meat. He has been sick before. He remembers the pain. He remembers the long nights, curled in discomfort, whispering to Thoth for relief. His meals now are cautious, controlled, bread soaked in water, lentils mashed until nearly liquid. He cannot afford another sickness. He suspects the wine might be spoiled too. Fermented too long. The amphora was cracked, but he says nothing. Silence is safer. And so the feast proceeds. The food is arranged, blessed, distributed. The gods receive their portion, symbolically of course. The priests bow and chant. They eat what they can, discard what they must. The rest is given to the temple servants or left for stray dogs. By midnight, the temple is still. The torches flicker. The scent of meat and bread lingers in the cool air. In a nearby alley, a boy rifles through discarded baskets. He finds a stale heel of bread half crushed. He bites into it with dirty hands and chews until his jaw aches. He is too young to understand why the bread tastes like sand. He is too hungry to care. Across the city, behind high walls, in the shelter of wealth or faith or desperation, people eat or try to. But food in ancient Egypt does not comfort, it does not delight, it fills, it numbs, it silences, and slowly, day by day, it chips away at teeth, at bodies, at hope. But no one speaks of it, not in words, only in groans, in absences, in prayers whispered into the night for relief, not from hunger, but from the food itself. The Nile flows on, indifferent, it feeds the land as it always has. But the taste it brings with it is bitter. The Nile, eternal and indifferent, continues its slow procession toward the sea. Its waters rise and fall with the seasons, carving life into the desert. But beneath its gift of fertility lies a quiet tyranny. For as generous as the Nile could be, it was just as often cruel. One year, the fields overflowed with grain. The next, they lay cracked and thirsty beneath a thin film of silt. The people called it divine rhythm, but there was little divine about the gnawing ache of famine. We begin this part of the story not in a home but in a field, in the heart of harvest. It is mid-season. The sun stands high, burning from a cloudless sky. A group of peasants bends low, their backs curved like the crescent moon, as they gather stalks of emmer. The wheat is dry, brittle. A good sign, perhaps, but their hands are blistered, their mouths dry. The river had flooded late that year, leaving less time for planting, less time for reaping. And the yield, though welcome, is thinner than hoped. One man, his tunic soaked in sweat, wipes his brow and straightens his spine. He scans the horizon, not for beauty, but for tax collectors. For every harvest in Egypt was owed first to the state. The granaries of Pharaoh, those massive looming structures made of mud, brick and fear, absorbed the grain long before any family could bake a single loaf. A tenth, then a fifth, then more, depending on decree. The scribe who accompanied the taxman carried a rod and a tablet. He did not smile. He did not forgive. If a farmer claimed his fields had failed, he was accused of deception. If he begged for leniency, he was fined. The man turns back to his work. He will save what little he can, burying jars of grain under the floor of his home behind woven mats beneath baskets of dried reeds. It is a desperate kind of hope. If they do not find it, his family will eat. If they do, there will be beatings. Back in the village, the granaries are filling. Workers pour grain into giant storage bins, tramping it down with their feet. Dust rises, clings to their skin, their throats. There is no rest, no comfort. The air smells of old straw and sweat. The guards watch closely. Theft is punished by mutilation, a hand, a nose, a tongue. Grain is power, and power is not shared freely. Yet despite all this, all the labour, all the danger, what results is still poor food. The emmer grain, when ground, is coarse. Even in the best conditions, it resists softness. It cannot be baked into airy loaves or refined into delicate pastries. The bread is always heavy, always rough. Its smell is yeasty, damp, faintly sour. Mixed with barley, sometimes with legumes to stretch the supply, it becomes denser still. Nutritious perhaps, but far from pleasant. Even the beer made from this same grain reflects the struggle. Brewed in clay jars, it is left to ferment under the open sun. No measurements, no temperature control, just instinct and guesswork. The result is cloudy, thick, more porridge than drink. Insects often gather around the rim. A thin crust forms on the top. One stirs it before sipping, hoping to avoid the worst of it. Still, it is better than the water. The Nile brings life, yes, but it also carries death. Untreated, the river teems with parasites, flukes, bacteria. Even the cleanest streams, those closest to temples or noble estates, are suspect. In some places, reeds are cut and woven into makeshift filters. In others, people boil their water when they can. But wood is scarce, fires must be conserved, and so the beer becomes the safer choice, however unpalatable. In a small dwelling on the edge of town, a mother prepares the evening meal. She is thin, her face lined, her hands cracked. Her youngest child sleeps in the corner, curled beneath a reed mat. His ribs show faintly beneath his skin. She knows he needs more food. She knows the bread alone is not enough. She reaches into a clay jar and withdraws a handful of dried locusts. They were caught 2 days prior, netted by the children near the canal. Fried quickly in oil and salted with care, they are stored now for moments like this. She crushes them into a powder and mixes them into the porridge. It is a quiet act of love. Protein disguised as spice. She will not tell him, let him believe it is only sea. She ladles the food into a cracked bowl and waits for him to wake. Across the village, the temple fires burn. Tonight is the festival of Osiris. Offerings are prepared. Dates, pomegranates, honey-glazed breads in the shape of divine eyes. The people gather to watch, to chant, to pray. But the food does not reach them. It is symbolic, reserved for priests, for gods, for memory. Some children climb nearby walls, hoping to glimpse the trays. They whisper of the sweetness, the colours, the smells. One girl insists she saw an almond, though she has never tasted one. The priests eat quietly behind the temple walls. Their meals are measured, careful. They are not gluttons, but they know the power of flavour. It is reserved for the sacred, not for the masses. Later, the leftover offerings are buried or burned. The gods have tasted them, metaphorically, of course. Their hunger is not like ours. A child watching the fire wonders if smoke carries flavour. She breathes in deeply, imagines sugar on her tongue, and then turns back to her mother, who hands her a strip of dried beetroot, tough and tasteless. Even in celebration, the food is thin, controlled, measured. The risks are too high. Spices, left too long, rot. Meat, carried too fast, spoils. Oil, if overheated, turns bitter. And still, they try. One woman, a widow known for her quiet hands, experiments in secret. She boils wild herbs, grinds date seeds, dries crushed lentils in the sun until they form a paste. She shapes them into patties, fries them quickly in precious oil and buries them in clay for safekeeping. She shares them only with her daughters. They taste earthy, unusual, almost good. But she dares not sell them. The priests might call it impure. The scribes might accuse her of deception. Innovation in food is dangerous. It challenges the order. It threatens the known, and so her creations remain hidden, shared in shadows, swallowed in silence. The Nile continues to rise and fall. The fields grow and wither, the granaries fill and empty, but the people eat the same: bread, beer, lentils, and silence. In ancient Egypt, flavor is a myth. Nutrition is rationed, and survival is the only feast. The night deepens. Stars blink awake over the Black River, and the land settles into stillness. In this hush, even the creak of a reed mat feels loud. The wind moves gently through the narrow alleys of clay homes, lifting the scent of ash and cooked grain into the air. In one such home, lit only by the fading orange of embers, an old woman cannot sleep. Her name has long been forgotten. She lies on her side, curled beneath a thin linen sheet, and listens to the sound of her own breath. Her mouth is dry, her belly is full, but not in a satisfying way, a tight fullness, heavy and gassy. Her dinner was the same as it always was: boiled lentils, hard bread soaked in beer. And yet tonight it sits wrong. The sourness rises to her throat. Her hands tremble as she reaches for a clay cup. The beer is warm, stale, but it soothes her throat for a moment. This feeling is not new. She has lived with it for decades. She knows which nights will bring the pain, which mornings will follow with weakness. Her teeth are long gone, worn to the root by decades of sand-laced bread. Her gums are tender. She eats by mashing food with her tongue against her palate, slowly, cautiously. But the food is always coarse, always rough. Her intestines are tired of the labour. In the silence, she remembers a day many years ago, a feast. She had been young then, just married. Her husband was a stoneworker, strong, respected. He had brought her a gift from a temple offering, a small cake, sticky with honey, wrapped in palm leaf. She had never tasted anything like it. The sweetness had made her eyes water. It had lingered on her tongue for hours. She had not tasted that sweetness again. Now, as her eyes begin to close, she feels the bloating rise again. She turns over, breathes shallowly, waits for sleep. Not far from her, in a neighbouring home, a young boy stirs. He is restless. His stomach cramps sharply, and he clutches at his side. His mother wakes and touches his forehead. It is hot, too hot. She whispers a prayer to Isis under her breath and hurries to brew a tea of mint leaves and black cumin. There are no doctors here, no access to the temple healers, only tradition, only hope. The tea simmers, the scent fills the room. The boy groans. It had been the fish, she thinks. Dried days ago, soaked too briefly. It had smelled odd, but he had been hungry, and she had not the heart to deny him. Now, she watches the water bubble and wishes she had waited longer. This is the quiet sickness of Egypt, the slow betrayal of its food. It does not announce itself with fury. It seeps in like sand through the cracks. A little spoiled fish, a little mould on lentils, a misjudged batch of beer, and suddenly a night of agony. Sometimes worse. In the scrolls of ancient physicians we find curious remedies: crushed dates mixed with goat fat, charcoal powders, incantations whispered over onions. But even they knew that food was both cure and curse, that the stomach could turn against its master at any time. Let us now step into a noble household. The hour is late, but lights still flicker in the courtyard. A feast had taken place earlier, a gathering of scribes and officials. The table had overflowed with roasted duck, figs, barley cakes, pomegranate wine. Laughter had filled the air. Toasts had been made to Pharaoh and to the gods. Music played from lyres, soft and hypnotic. But now, the hall is quiet. One of the guests lies on a cot, groaning softly. His robes are loosened. A physician crouches beside him, examining his pulse, his eyes. The man had eaten too much too fast. He had mixed wine and beer. He had ignored the sour smell of the duck, so enchanted by the rare flavour. And now he pays. The physician prescribes a poultice of crushed lotus root and honey. He chants a short verse to Heka, god of magic. But he knows this is not about gods, it is about gut. And the gut is rarely merciful in Egypt. Meanwhile, in the kitchen below, the servants clean in silence. They scrape burnt bits from clay pots. They sweep grain from the floor. One of them, a girl of 15, wraps the remaining barley cakes in damp cloth, hoping to preserve them for morning. She knows the risks of leaving them too long. Even one day can invite mould. Invisible at first, but foul by morning. She whispers a quiet wish that the flies stay away. Food waste is not allowed. Every crumb is repurposed. Even spoiled beer can be used to clean pots. Even mouldy bread can be fed to pigs. But if the spoiled food reaches a person, that is a different matter. The kitchens of the wealthy, despite their size, do not escape the sickness that food brings. In fact, the abundance often invites it. Meat, if not salted or smoked properly, goes rancid quickly. Fruit bruises fast in the summer heat. Without glass or refrigeration, preservation is a desperate, clumsy art. In the poorer quarters, preservation is simpler by necessity. Dry everything, salt everything, or cook only what you will eat. Let us walk now to a small home at the edge of the village. A woman kneels beside her sleeping husband. His breath is shallow, his belly is bloated. She remembers the stew, lentils, garlic, and a handful of wild herbs she'd never used before. It had smelled strange, bitter, but they had nothing else. He had eaten with gratitude. That was 3 hours ago. Now he lies still. His face is pale. She calls for her neighbour, who brings hot water and a prayer. They do not know the name of the herb, only that it grew beside the canal and that it had seemed green and fresh and harmless. In ancient Egypt, hunger walks beside risk. You eat what you have. You stretch what you can. You experiment carefully, sometimes too carefully. Even the most trusted foods, lentils, beans, onions, can betray you in poor seasons. Grown in exhausted soil, washed in tainted water, mixed with spoiled oil, the line between nourishment and poison is thin and invisible. As the night finally slips into deepest silence, the Nile continues its dark journey. Its waters ripple, eternal, feeding the land with bounty that too often betrays its promise. In the homes that line its banks, people dream restlessly of sweetness remembered, of flavour imagined, of meals that do not bring pain. But the dawn will bring the same ingredients, the same grindstones, the same bread. And once more, Egypt will eat and endure. Dawn again. A soft light creeps over the horizon, brushing against the limestone temples and mud brick homes of the Nile Valley. The air is still cool, fresh from the night, but the day waits impatiently behind it, ready to descend with heat. In the stillness, a rooster calls. Somewhere, a grinding stone begins its slow rhythm. The world wakes, and with it the cycle of food begins once more. We begin this morning not in a kitchen, but beside a market stall. The market is small, set on the corner of a dusty street in a mid-sized town. The vendors are arriving, dragging carts, balancing baskets on their shoulders. Each stall is shaded with frayed linen cloth tied to wooden poles. The smells mingle: raw onions, animal dung, damp straw, overripe fruit. Flies rise and fall like smoke. A woman, old and deliberate, sets out her goods on a cracked plank. Dried dates, a few handfuls of lentils, and 2 small loaves of barley bread wrapped in cloth. The bread is yesterday's and already stiff. She knows it won't fetch much. Still, she lays them out carefully, smoothing the cloth around them. Beside her, another vendor arranges onions in neat rows. Their skins are peeling, and their pungency stings the morning air. This is not a place for variety. It is a place for necessity. There is no citrus, no nuts, no meat. On rare occasions, someone will bring fish, dried, salted, curled like parchment. Once a month, a trader from the east might offer a pinch of spice, sealed tightly in cloth, too expensive for anyone but the temple or a noble's cook. The common people do not linger by that stall. They only glance and dream. A young mother arrives, her baby wrapped tightly on her back. She carries a small pouch of barley. Her eyes scan the market, calculating silently. Her family has eaten lentil porridge for 4 days. She's hoping for onions today, something sharp to break the monotony. She haggles gently. The vendor offers 3 onions. She asks for 4. They settle on 3.5. She does not smile, but she nods, grateful. Let us follow her home to the edge of the village. Her kitchen is a corner of the house, partly open to the air. The hearth is a simple stone ring, blackened by years of fire. She sets down her bundle and begins to prepare the fire. There is little wood. She will burn dry dung and straw. Not ideal, but it will do. The smoke rises quickly, stinging her eyes, clinging to her skin. She slices the onions with a flint blade. It is dull, and she must press hard. Her hands are steady from years of this work. Into the pot go the onions, the last of yesterday's lentils, a splash of beer, and a pinch of salt. It is not much, but it is warm, and warm is something. As the pot simmers, her husband returns from the fields. His feet are caked in mud, his body thin beneath his linen wrap. He does not speak as he sits. He simply closes his eyes and waits. The child, now awake, toddles to his side. The man lifts the child with effort, resting him on his lap. The food is ready soon after. There are no spoons. Each person dips bread into the pot, tearing, soaking, eating in silence. The child chews slowly, his eyes half-lidded. He spits out the onion skins. The bread is rough, but it fills the space where hunger once sat. That is enough. Elsewhere in the village, another kind of kitchen prepares a very different meal. In the estate of a mid-ranking official, the servants are bustling. A guest is expected, a scribe from the north tasked with evaluating land records. The kitchen is larger, but not much cleaner. Clay jugs line the walls. Woven baskets hold dried figs, nuts, herbs. A slab of meat, goat perhaps, rests on a wooden board, covered in buzzing flies until a servant waves them away. The head cook is a man in his 40s. Thin but sharp, he barks orders, instructing one boy to crush garlic with a stone, another to fetch fresh water. The meat is to be stewed with leeks and lentils. A loaf of white emmer bread will be baked alongside. And there is honey, enough to coat the bread in a thin layer of sweetness, a luxury reserved for rare occasions. As the pot simmers, the cook dips in a piece of bread and tastes. It is good by Egyptian standards, but still plain, still earthy. He considers adding coriander, then thinks better of it. They have little left. Better to save it for the feast of Wepet Renpet, the new year. The guest arrives. He eats quietly, murmuring approval. The host smells cook watches from the shadows. He has done well today. Still, he feels no pride. Tomorrow will return to gruel, to spoiled fish, to reused oil. Today is not the norm. It is an exception. Let us shift again. In the granary of a temple complex, scribes tally inventory. Each sack of grain is weighed, inspected and sealed. Workers lift baskets onto shelves, the dust thick in the air. Grain is everything here, payment, offering, power. One scribe sneezes and curses. The dust chokes him. He writes, Emma from the eastern field, weight 54 sacks, quality coarse, infestation present. Infestation, a word too familiar in this land. Insects, mould, rot, they are constant threats. Even sealed in jars or baskets, grain is vulnerable. Rats chew through palm fibre lids. Moisture invites mildew, and there are few remedies. The people accept it as they do the heat, with endurance, not resistance. And when the grain is bad, the bread is worse. When the bread is worse, the people suffer. And when the people suffer, they grow quiet. They do not complain. They chew, slowly, gratefully, because bad food is better than no food, and they know what it means to have none. As the sun climbs higher, the market begins to empty. The vendors pack up what little they have left. A boy carries a broken basket on his head. Inside, a handful of beans. His face is dusty. His eyes are sharp. He is already thinking of how to stretch them into something edible. He walks with purpose, and behind him, a cat pads silently along the market path, sniffing the air for scraps. Another day of eating begins in Egypt, not of pleasure, but of persistence. Midday arrives like a wave of fire. The cool breath of morning is gone now, replaced by the shimmering haze of sunlit dust. The earth radiates heat, and the streets of the village seem to shrink under its pressure. Dogs lie still in shadow, tongues slack. The Nile has slowed to a sleepy murmur, and all across the land kitchens fall briefly silent, for even food must wait beneath this sun. In one home, shaded by woven reeds and the thin canopy of a sycamore fig tree, an elderly man rests with his back against the wall. His eyes are closed, his breathing slow. Beside him, a half-eaten loaf of barley bread sits on a wooden plate. The crust is cracked and hard, the inner crumb is dry. His hands, rough and lined from decades of field work, tremble slightly as he lifts the bread again and takes another bite. It hurts to chew. He grinds with his molars what little remains of them. Bits of grit grind against enamel already worn down to nothing. But he does not stop. He eats like a man digging a ditch, slowly, persistently, because it must be done. In his youth, the bread had been no better. He remembers the grindstone in his mother's house, the smell of hot clay, the endless repetition, flour dark with husk, flecked with stone, bitter at the edges. He remembers biting down on something sharp once, a chip of quartz, and bleeding from his gums for days. But he said nothing, complaining only, wasted time. Beside him now, his grandson stirs a pot on the hearth. The fire has been coaxed low, just enough to keep a simmer. Inside the pot, water, a handful of lentils, 3 thin slices of dried onion, and the heel of last night's bread, soaked until it softens. This is their lunch, a stew in name only, more water than food. But it carries the scent of garlic and smoke, and that is enough to draw them in. When the pot is done, the boy pours a small bowl for his grandfather. The old man drinks it instead of eating it. His teeth are too far gone. He swallows slowly, closing his eyes between sips. "Not bad," he says at last, voice like cracked leather. The boy smiles faintly. Across the village, a different kind of meal is being prepared, one not meant to be eaten. In the embalming house, the priests of Anubis are at work. A noble woman has died. Her body lies upon a stone table draped in linen. The air smells of natron and incense, sharp and sickly sweet. As part of the funerary process, the ka, the spirit, must be fed, and so the funerary kitchen is summoned. Bread is baked in symbolic forms. Figs are arranged on platters. Small bowls are filled with honey and milk. A goose, salted and roasted, is placed upon a reed tray. These offerings will be buried with the body or placed in the tomb chapel to sustain the spirit in the afterlife. But the food is not always real. Many tombs contain clay replicas, miniature loaves, carved meats, fake grapes painted purple. These are substitutes, symbolic gestures. The dead do not chew, they do not digest. They only require the image, the idea, the intention. But the living, the workers, the priests, the mourners, they often eat the real offerings before burial, quietly, discreetly, as tradition allows. The sacred becomes sustenance. It has always been this way. In one corner, a servant licks honey from her thumb after placing a cake upon the tray. She has not eaten since dawn. No one stops her. No one speaks. Let us step further still into the fields beyond the village. Here, farmers rest beneath makeshift tents, shade from papyrus mats propped with sticks. Their morning work is done, barley gathered, flax cut. Their hands are red from the sun and dry from the soil. A jug of beer is passed between them, thick, warm, and slightly sour. They drink slowly, more from thirst than pleasure. One of the men pulls out a small pouch from his belt. Inside are crushed lupin seeds, soaked in water to reduce their bitterness. He shares them with the others. They chew quietly, grimacing slightly at the sharp, lingering aftertaste. They help the belly, he says. The others nod. Even bitter food can soothe the gut, or so they believe. Superstition and knowledge blur easily in Egypt. The people understand their food not just as nourishment, but as medicine, as magic, as fate. They speak of foods that cool the blood, that wake the heart, that chase away the bad spirits in the belly. Some herbs are feared, cursed by priests blamed for sickness. Others are treasured, traded in secret, hidden from taxmen. But rarely does anyone experiment. Recipes are passed down unchanged. Innovation is dangerous. A new dish might excite the mouth, yes, but it might also bring illness or draw suspicion. A woman who bakes a strange bread risks being called a witch. A man who stirs herbs unknown to his neighbours may find his stall empty by morning, and so they stick to what is known: bread, lentils, beer, onions, dried fish, dried dates. The same tastes every day for a lifetime. Occasionally someone tells a story, whispered always, of a feast held in the palace of Pharaoh. They say the tables stretched longer than the eye could see. They say wine flowed like the Nile, and geese roasted in spices from the land of Punt. They say there were olives and almonds and honey cakes stacked like bricks. But no one telling the story has ever been there, and those who have do not speak of it. It is not their place. And besides, the hunger of the people is not for opulence. It is for peace, a full belly, a night without cramping, a day without rot in the grain, a meal that nourishes without wounding. As the sun begins to fall again, slow, golden and forgiving, the village starts to stir from its heat-induced trance. Fires are rekindled, bread is prepared, the pots are refilled, and in every home, from the humblest hut to the priest's house, the same question echoes quietly. Will the food be safe today? Will it taste the same? Will it hurt? And still they eat, because there is nothing else to do. Evening settles again across the Nile. It arrives not suddenly, but like a long exhale, the kind that follows a day of relentless heat and slow hunger. The air, thick and fragrant with ash and baked earth, softens as shadows lengthen. In the villages and cities alike, the low hum of mealtime begins. Not a celebration, not even a reprieve, merely a continuation. A woman lights a small oil lamp. The wick flickers. Its flame dances on the clay walls, casting strange shapes. She kneels before a clay oven and pulls out the last loaf of the day. It is small and uneven. The bottom is scorched, a crack splits its side. She taps it with her fingernail, hollow, dry. She sighs, not in disappointment, but in resignation. Behind her, her children wait quietly. No one asks what's for dinner. They already know. She breaks the loaf into pieces with her hands. The crust is hard, the inside is gummy. One child winces as she chews, but hides it. Another picks out a blackened bit and drops it onto the floor. No one speaks. Bread is too precious for criticism. This is not the food of celebration. It is food of habit. But not far away, celebration does exist, though not for most. In a nobleman's villa overlooking the river, music plays softly, a stringed harp, a flute. Laughter drifts out from a stone courtyard lined with cushions and low tables. A feast is underway. The host, a cousin to the local governor, is entertaining guests from the capital. The table groans under the weight of variety: spit-roasted duck, honey-glazed bread twists, fresh melons, dates stuffed with crushed almonds, and wine poured from painted jars. Slaves in fine linen circulate with trays. Scented oil perfumes the air. Conversation flows easily, more performance than sincerity. And yet, for all its elegance, even here, in this rare oasis of abundance, the food remains limited. The duck, though spiced, is dry. It was slaughtered this morning, too recently to have relaxed. The bread, though beautifully shaped, still carries the coarse graininess of emmer flour. One guest picks at a date and quietly removes a small beetle. He says nothing. He knows better. The wine, imported from the Delta, is strong and sour. Fermented too long in the heat, it leaves a dryness on the tongue that even water cannot quench. Still, they eat and they smile. Because this, at least, is a performance worth pretending. But beneath the glamour is the same truth found in every corner of Egypt. The food, though ritualized and revered, is fundamentally flawed. Let us return to the streets, where truth walks without sandals. A fisherman sits on a low wall near the river's edge, cleaning the day's catch under a fading sky. His knife is bronze, dull at the edge, and the fish, bulty maybe, is small and stiff. He slices slowly, methodically. The innards spill into a woven basket. He plans to dry the flesh overnight on flat stones and salt it with what little remains in his jar. He sniffs the fish. It's already beginning to turn. Too late to eat fresh, too early to toss. He rinses it quickly and presses it between two clay tiles. If the night is dry, it might still be edible by morning. If not, there will be stomach cramps. Again, his neighbour, a weaver, passes by carrying a pot. Inside is a mash of beans and beer, a kind of porridge he's eaten every night for years. He offers the fisherman a taste. The fisherman takes a bite. It is warm, bitter, and yet oddly comforting, not for its flavour but for its familiarity. In ancient Egypt, meals rarely surprised. They were neither better nor worse than the day before, but within that sameness was a strange comfort, the knowing, the predictability, the safety in routine. Still, sometimes routine failed. In the dark corners of the temple's storage rooms, mould grows thick on old baskets of grain. Scribes whisper about a bad harvest. The Nile had risen too high this year, drowning the younger shoots. Some fields never dried. The granaries will hold less than expected. And less grain means more bread made from barley husk, from whatever scraps can be spared. More coarse flour, more grit, more aching teeth, more hunger. The priests pray, of course. But the gods do not till fields, nor mend damaged roots. One scribe, pale from too many days indoors, writes in his journal, "The bread of this week is foul. My gums bleed. The fish tasted of rot. I vomited. I dreamt of figs, fresh, sweet, cold. I have never tasted one cold, but I think I would like it." Let us follow his thoughts just briefly to the idea of cold. In Egypt, cold is not part of food. There is no ice, no refrigeration, nothing to soothe a sore stomach or ease the heat. Everything is warm: lukewarm beer, tepid water, bread that has cooled to a brick but never refreshes, fruit that softens too fast, spoils too quickly. The concept of coolness, of freshness, is foreign, even yearned for. The desert denies it, the river forgets it. Only in the imagination does it exist, and so meals are always warm, fermented, dry or dense. Nothing crunches, nothing chills, nothing relieves. A girl, 8 or 9, sits with her feet dangling over a canal wall. She's chewing a piece of raw sugarcane. Her father gave it to her to keep her quiet. It is sweet, astonishingly so. Her mouth fills with juice. She grins. This is as close as she's come to delight in food. But the moment is fleeting, her teeth ache already, and the fibres are hard to swallow. As night deepens, lamps are lit in every corner of the land. Some shine over stale bread and boiled beans, others over polished plates and roasted fowl. But no matter the house, no matter the hands, the food remains more burden than blessing. And still the people eat, because they must, because they always have. Because Egypt, for all its glories, fed its people with stone. Midnight cloaks the Nile in silence. The water moves without sound, a black ribbon under a ceiling of stars. The cities sleep, the fields rest. The gods, if they are watching, do so without making their presence known. And yet, in a narrow courtyard hidden behind mud brick walls, a single flame still flickers. A woman sits beside it, hunched, grinding something small in a worn stone bowl. She is a midwife, and tonight she waits. Inside the house, a girl labours through childbirth. Her cries are soft, held back by shame or fear. The air inside is thick with sweat, prayer, and the bitter aroma of crushed garlic and soot. The midwife adds a pinch of dried mint to the mixture in her bowl, then stirs in beer. Not for the child, not yet, but for the mother, to ease her pain, to keep her from fainting. The mixture is crude, uneven, but it's all she has. No milk, no broth, no clean water, only beer. Bitter, cloudy, slightly sour, and more consistent than any physician. She carries the cup inside. This is one of Egypt's oldest truths. Beer is not just a drink, it is a lifeline. The Nile may nourish the soil, but the beer nourishes the people. Children drink it from clay cups. Labourers carry it in gourds. Even the sick are given beer to settle the stomach. Not because it tastes good, it rarely does, but because it's safer than the water. Made from fermented bread mash or sprouted grains, Egyptian beer is a porridge-thick concoction. It fills the belly, it dulls the edge of hunger. And in a world where every meal risks illness, beer is predictable. But it is not without consequence. The alcohol is low, but the impurities are high. Brewing vessels made of porous clay are difficult to clean. Yeasts are wild and inconsistent. On hot days, the beer burns too fast. On cool ones, it ferments too slow. And when it's wrong, it smells of death. Still, they drink because water is worse. Let us follow the path of that water. Upstream, near a canal, an ox cart rattles along a dirt path. The driver pulls it to a stop beside a shallow pool, one of many fed by the Nile's annual flood. He jumps down, fills his amphora, and seals it with waxed linen. The water looks clear. He hopes it is. He has no filter, no boiling fire, just hope. Back in the city, the amphora is delivered to a baker's wife. She nods, inspects the seal, then pours the water into a basin where grain has been soaking since morning. She's making a barley paste to form small loaves, round, flat, dry at the edges. She mixes the paste by hand, kneading it on a stone slab. The dough sticks to her fingers. The smell is sour. Good, she thinks. It will rise quickly. She does not know the water contains parasites. How could she? There are no tools for seeing such things, no names for the invisible, only symptoms. Tomorrow, the bread will be baked, the loaves will be eaten, and days later, one child will grow sick, another will vomit, an elder will grow too weak to walk, and no one will know why. They will blame heat, or the gods, or fate. But never the bread, because bread is sacred. Bread is Egypt. In every temple relief, the afterlife is depicted as a field of reeds, green and tall, swaying under a golden sky. The blessed dead harvest grain with sickles of flint, smiling. They bake bread. They drink beer, they eat fruit and honey, no pain, no rot, no hunger. Food in the afterlife becomes pure again, but in the world of the living, it is never that clean. A scribe in a town near Abydos sits in his study, lit by a single candle. He is copying a hymn to Osiris, but his mind is elsewhere. His stomach churns. He ate too quickly that evening. The lentils were undercooked. The beer tasted odd. He reaches for a clay cup filled with cooled barley water and takes a cautious sip. It's bland, but soothing. Beside his writing board is a small wooden tray, a snack set out by his wife, dried figs, a crust of bread, a single onion. He avoids the onion. It is too strong for his stomach. He picks at the bread, chewing slowly. His mind wanders. He remembers when he was a boy visiting a relative who worked in the temple kitchens. The man had shown him a preserved duck, salted and wrapped in palm leaves meant for a high priest's burial. He had stolen a piece when no one was looking, a thin strip of meat, chewy and almost sweet from the resin. It had made him sick for 2 days, but it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. Now, as a grown man with ink-stained fingers and bad teeth, he still thinks about that bite. About how flavour, real flavour, always seems to come with punishment. Outside, the night deepens. The stars reflect in the water. The wind shifts slightly, bringing with it the smell of distant fires, wet clay, and something else, the unmistakable scent of fermenting grain. Everywhere in Egypt, it seems, something is always cooking, always brewing, always breaking down, and always being eaten anyway. Because what else is there? The people cannot escape their food. It is in their myths, their offerings, their taxes, their dreams. They carve it into tombs, they offer it to gods. They build their lives around it, and yet they never quite conquer it. They live in service to it and suffer under it. Because in ancient Egypt, food is not a pleasure. It is a force, a slow, grinding river, much like the Nile itself, beautiful from afar, essential for life, but always threatening to drown. The sun rises once more, gold and vast and merciless. It glides above the Nile with an almost divine indifference, as if it were another god among many, watching, but never intervening. The land awakens with its warmth, stretching into motion like a creature shaking off sleep. And once again the rituals of food begin. A woman, middle-aged and worn thin by time, sits before a reed basket filled with legumes. She sorts them with care, one by one, plucking out the pebbles, the husks, the dried worms. Her fingers move slowly but steadily. This is not a task you can rush. Her back aches, her eyes burn. But if she does not clean the lentils well, the meal will be spoiled. Or worse. Beside her, her daughter grinds Emma with a saddle quern. The rhythmic scrape of stone on stone fills the morning air. It is a sound every Egyptian knows and dreads. It is the song of survival, repeated from generation to generation. The girl coughs, a dry cough, from the dust of the flour. She wipes her face with her forearm, leaving a streak of white powder on her cheek, and keeps grinding. The family has enough for bread today, and a small stew. The stew will be thin, the bread thick. That is the balance. Always the balance. Later, the meal is cooked. The lentils are boiled in a clay pot over a dung fire. The bread slapped onto hot stones to bake. The smoke curls around the ceiling, escapes through the open doorway. The stew is flavoured with garlic and salt. The bread burns at the edges. When it's time to eat, no one speaks. They chew, slowly, carefully. In another part of town, a boy vomits. He had stolen a slice of fish from his neighbour's drying line. It had been left out too long or not salted enough. His mother scrubs the floor where he lay curled. She mutters a prayer as she wipes his face. She doesn't scold him. He was hungry. She understands. She's seen this before. Everyone has. Because in Egypt, sickness doesn't come with spectacle. It arrives quietly, in the gut, in the breath, in the long, endless nights of cramping and sweating and whispering for mercy. Let us leave the homes for now and walk into the grain fields. They stretch endlessly, tall, gold, waving in the wind like the sea. At first glance, they are beautiful, but a closer look reveals a harsher truth. Some patches are dry, others are flattened from wind or water. The heads of grain are small this year. A farmer runs his hand along the stalks. His lips are tight. He knows already what the scribes will say when they measure this yield, that it is enough, that taxes are due, that the gods must not be cheated. But he knows this will leave his family hungry. Again, his wife watches from a distance, holding a basket. She doesn't speak. They've had this conversation before, without words. The granary will fill before their bellies do. In the cities, scribes record the flow of grain like priests tracking the stars. Every measure is sacred, every mistake punished. A few handfuls unaccounted for can mean accusation, or worse. And so they measure obsessively, weigh, record, repeat. But what they do not record is rot. Spoiled grain is common, hidden deep in storage bins away from the light where moisture creeps in and moulds flourish. The scribes do not count what cannot be seen, and so families take home sacks filled with sickness. Bread is made from it, beer is brewed from it, and mouths consume it, unaware. Not all sickness comes from food itself. Some comes from what food attracts. Let us visit a kitchen tucked behind a merchant's house in Memphis. There are pots stacked high, some glazed, some cracked. Baskets line the walls. Dried fruit hangs from strings above, but flies dominate the room. Dozens, maybe hundreds, hover over every surface. They land in the flour, on the meat, inside the open jars. The cook swats at them constantly, but they return. Always. Even the richest homes cannot escape them. Their numbers swell with the heat, their presence is eternal. Where food is, flies follow, and where flies go, disease spreads. The priesthood knows this in their own way. Ritual cleanliness is not just about holiness, it is about survival. The gods may demand purity, but so does the human body. In temples, meals are prepared with gloves of linen, hair covered, mouths covered, water poured over hands before and after each task. But this is not what most Egyptians can do. They cannot waste linen, or water, or time. They clean their hands with sand, their pots with water that barely qualifies as such. They live close to the earth and its filth, and so their food carries everything they carry, their hopes, their exhaustion, their bacteria. Yet despite it all, food remains sacred, not because of taste, but because of what it means. A man may live for 70 years on bread and beer alone. He may never taste meat except at funerals. He may never see honey except in the hands of a priest. He may never know the sharp bite of citrus, or the softness of milk, or the crispness of a fresh green leaf. But still, he eats, he gives thanks. Because food, however poor, is life, even when it brings pain, even when it brings death. A tomb painter once carved a scene into the wall of a nobleman's final chamber. It showed the man seated under a fig tree, smiling as servants brought trays of roasted meats and fruit and wine. His wife sits beside him, his children stand behind. It is a vision of eternity. But beside this scene, in a corner almost unnoticeable, the same painter etched a small basket of bread, cracked, burned, and empty. Perhaps he knew the truth. Perhaps he too had gone hungry, had chewed the same bread until his teeth bled, had watched a child cry from cramps, had prayed over a pot of spoiled lentils. Perhaps he believed, like so many did, that even in paradise, the memory of hunger would remain, and still he painted the food, because that too was worship. The morning rises, but the air is not kind. Even before the sun finds its full height, the heat is already pressing. It creeps into kitchens, into grain baskets, into the cracks between mud bricks. The Nile shines in the distance, deceptively peaceful. Its waters hide what they carry: silt, life, disease. On its banks, a new day begins with old routines. A baker wipes the sweat from his brow with a sleeve already soaked. His hands are dusted with flour, though flour may be too generous a word. What he works with is a mixture of ground emmer, barley, chaff, and whatever else could be spared. It clumps more than it binds. He needs it anyway, with the patience of someone who knows no other task. His oven, shaped like a beehive, is hot. Too hot. He pulls open the lid with a rag, coughs at the burst of smoke, and slides in a row of dough rounds. Some have cracked already. The clay beneath them hisses faintly from spilled moisture. He leans back, waits. In the far corner of the shop, his son prepares the beer, a thick, cloudy brew made from yesterday's leftover bread and warm water. The boy stirs it with a stick, watching bubbles rise from the surface. The smell is sour, not pleasant, not terrible, but familiar, like everything. A customer enters, a woman in a plain wrap, barefoot, with a child holding her hand. She places a small piece of linen on the counter. Inside it are lentils and salt, carefully measured. She slides them forward. The baker nods. He gives her 3 loaves, small, misshapen, dense. She does not smile, but she nods in return. Her son looks up at the loaves, wide-eyed. As they leave, the baker exhales. He will use the lentils to thicken tomorrow's porridge. The salt he will trade for more chaff. Nothing is wasted, not even disappointment. Let us move now beyond the bakery, through narrow alleys, past storage rooms, goat pens, and vendors shouting into the morning. Let us stop where the aroma shifts, away from grain and smoke, towards something sharper. A butcher squats behind a low stone table. Before him lies a goat, recently slaughtered, the blood still fresh in a basin. He works quickly, slicing the meat into cuts. Behind him, strips hang from a wooden rack, drying in the sun. Flies gather in black clouds. He does not bother swatting them away. Meat is rare, sacred almost. Most people will not eat it today, or this week, or this month. A priest might, a noble might. But the common people? They see meat in their dreams, or at funerals, or when a festival god demands a blood offering and scraps are thrown to the crowd. The butcher's assistant, a girl no older than 13, grinds dried coriander seed in a stone bowl. The butcher tells her it hides the sourness in old meat. She doesn't like the smell, but she grinds anyway. A man arrives, thin and desperate, offering half a jar of oil for a cut of liver. The The butcher hesitates. He knows the man's wife is sick. That liver, salted and boiled in barley water, is said to restore strength. But the oil is thin, cloudy, not worth the trade. He accepts. He gives the man a sliver of liver, barely enough. The oil is poured into a small jug. Later, it will coat the innards of older meat, give the illusion of freshness. Everyone has their illusions. Back in the village, the woman from the bakery returns home. She places the loaves on a reed tray and wraps them in cloth. They'll eat one for lunch. The rest must last. She sets to work boiling lentils. The pot hisses, bubbles, spits. She watches, adding water carefully. The child sits nearby, hungry already. He pulls at the cloth covering the bread. She gently slaps his hand. "Wait," she says, "it must soften first." She drops a hunk of bread into the boiling lentils. It absorbs the water, expands, thickens. It loses its form, becomes a mass of paste and grain and steam. When it's cool enough, she spoons it into 2 bowls. Hers is smaller. They eat with their fingers, slow and deliberate. The child hums as he eats. To him, this is a treat, a warm meal, something filling, something that doesn't make his teeth hurt. To her, it is sustenance, nothing more. In the shadows of the temple, another meal is being prepared, not for the gods, for the scribes. They work through the morning, bent over scrolls and ink palettes. Their hands are callous not from labour but from repetition. Their thoughts do not dwell on taste, but on portions, records, measures. Still, when the tray arrives, they pause. Figs, bread, a small bowl of fermented fish paste, beer. They eat without speaking. The bread is finer than most, made from sieved flour, no chaff. But even here, among the literate and the favoured, the flavours are faint. The figs are overripe. The fish paste stings the tongue. The beer is flat. One scribe coughs, wipes his mouth. He murmurs, "We eat like kings." The others laugh. Not because it's true, but because it is not. Far away, in a dusty yard near the outskirts, a young girl chews on raw reeds. Not sugarcane, but something harder, hollow stems that squeak between her teeth. They taste of nothing, but they distract her from the emptiness in her stomach. Her mother told her that Pharaoh lives forever because he eats food made by the gods. The girl wonders what that means. She imagines golden loaves, wine that doesn't burn, fruit that isn't mushy. Maybe something cold, like water from a deep cave. She has never tasted anything cold. She does not know that even Pharaoh's food, when it rots, smells just the same. As the sun begins its descent, shadows stretch long and the fires are rekindled. The same pots boil. The same bread is baked, the same hopes rise, only to settle again. Egypt feeds its people, but not with kindness. The sun lowers in the sky, and with it the world begins to dim. A soft, amber light pours over the flat rooftops of the village houses. Shadows grow long across courtyards littered with shards of broken pottery, baskets half repaired, and mats woven from reeds. The day's heat lifts slowly like steam from the riverbanks. A gentle breeze stirs the dust, carrying with it the scent of firewood, oil, and something faintly sweet, or perhaps sour. In Egypt, it is often hard to tell. In one small home, a young man scrapes the bottom of a clay pot with a wooden spoon. The stew is thin. It had been thicker earlier, but water was added to stretch it, once, then twice, then again, until its contents were more broth than meal. Lentils, once full-bodied, have disintegrated into mush. The onions have vanished into the liquid. What remains is warmth and salt and memory. He pours the last of it into 2 small bowls. His wife, seated beside a pile of flax thread, sets her work down and accepts the food silently. She is tired. Not from work, though there has been plenty of that, from making linen, from hauling water, from washing the same few garments again and again until the fibres threaten to vanish. No, the exhaustion that sits beneath her eyes is deeper, older. It is the weariness of eating without satisfaction. They sip their stew. There is no bread tonight. The last of the flour went into a loaf 2 days ago, and what's left in the jar is not worth baking. He'd asked a neighbour for more grain, but the granary guards had grown stricter. Rumours of a poor harvest spread quickly, and generosity fades in their shadow. She puts her bowl down half-finished. "I'm full," she says. She's not, but she knows he's hungrier. He does not argue. He finishes her portion with a quiet gratitude, eyes lowered. In Egypt, kindness is often made of small silences. Beyond their home, in a wealthier quarter of the village, a feast is being prepared. Not a grand one, not for nobility or priests, but larger than usual. A marriage is to be celebrated. Two merchant families join, and the union is marked with food. Dozens of small loaves are arranged in baskets. Some are shaped like fish, others like lotus flowers. A few are sprinkled with dried herbs. Rare flour has been used, lighter and less coarse. Emmer mixed with barley, sieved with linen cloth, ground more carefully. A goat has been slaughtered. Its ribs are being roasted over an open fire, the fat spitting onto the coals with each turn. Children gather at the edge of the courtyard, drawn by the scent, their eyes wide, their mouths wet. They are not allowed to come closer. Not yet. Inside, in the kitchen space, women knead dough with their elbows and forearms, working quickly. One prepares a cake of dates and crushed figs pressed into a clay mould, glazed with honey from a temple jar. It's beautiful. The smell is intoxicating. She resists the urge to taste it. It is not hers. Later, during the celebration, servants will bring out the trays. Guests will eat slowly, performatively, their fingers sticky with sweetness. They will murmur approval. They will compliment the bride's family. The men will drink beer and argue over the cost of linen. The women will whisper and watch. But beneath the joy, beneath the music and the clapping and the full mouths is caution. No one eats too much meat. They know it spoils fast. No one trusts the fish too warm too long on the table. They touch the bread to their lips and then set it down. Because even celebration cannot undo the instincts learned in famine. Elsewhere, under the columns of a quiet temple, a different kind of meal is underway, an offering to the gods. Bread, fruit, beer, a cut of meat. Dried herbs scattered like blessings. The priest chants softly, his voice echoing through the stone hall. He bows, pours water, lights incense. The gods must be fed even when their people go hungry. Especially then. After the ritual, the food will be taken by the temple kitchen. Recycled, reused, redistributed. Nothing wasted. Nothing ever truly given. Back in the village, the couple who shared stew now sit in the dark. The oil lamp is low. The child sleeping in the corner stirs but does not wake. A dog barks in the distance. The young man watches the flame flicker and thinks about tomorrow. He wonders if he will eat meat again before the year ends, if his wife remembers the taste of milk, if their child will know what it is to be full. He does not say these thoughts aloud. Words are precious too. A sudden gust lifts a corner of the reed mat near the door. He gets up, secures it with a brick, then returns to his place beside his wife. She leans her head on his shoulder. They sit like that in silence until the lamp sputters once, then fades. Above them the stars shimmer cold and distant. They say the gods ride in boats across the sky, feasting forever on perfect food, wine that never sours, loaves that never harden, grapes that burst with juice at a touch. But here on earth the food is always fading. Too hard, too bitter, too little. And yet it is still shared. Still prayed over, still waited for, because in Egypt food is not only survival, it is a kind of faith. A pale morning filters in through the palm fronds. The village stirs slowly. There is a chill that clings to the skin, not cold in the way of distant lands, but cool enough to notice. The clay walls are damp from night air. The fire pits, long extinguished, now sit cold and grey. A rooster calls, as it always does, but no one hurries. Hunger waits, but it has grown familiar, patient. In one narrow alley, a boy crouches beside a basket filled with yesterday's bread. It is hard now. The loaves make a dull knock when tapped against the stone floor. He selects one carefully, breaks it with effort, then sets the pieces into a clay bowl filled with water and a splash of beer. He stirs them with his fingers until the crust begins to soften. He has learned that if you wait long enough, even the worst bread can be swallowed. Inside the house, his grandmother prepares the morning stew, if it can be called that. A single onion, bruised and thin, is peeled with shaking hands and dropped into boiling water. She adds crushed lentils, saved from the night before. Then a pinch of crushed fenugreek, scraped from the bottom of a jar. The smell is sharp, medicinal. It doesn't make the dish taste better, only different. She hums as she stirs, a tune without name or melody, a habit. The boy brings the soaked bread. She adds it to the pot, thickening the mix. It bubbles once, then settles into a lazy simmer. This will be breakfast, and likely dinner too. In the homes around them, similar scenes unfold. Fathers repair fishing nets with fingers calloused from rope burns. Mothers kneel beside grindstones, working emmer wheat into flour as fine as their stones allow. Children gather kindling. Old men sit on rooftops and watch the river, saying nothing, as if the Nile might offer answers if stared at long enough. Everyone is waiting, not for change, not even for relief, but for the rhythm to return. Because food in Egypt is not guided by hunger alone. It is ruled by time, by seasons, by floods. When the Nile floods high, the land is generous. Grains grow thick, fruit swells. Bread, though still coarse, becomes slightly more plentiful. Onions are larger. Beer ferments cleaner. But when the flood is late, or worse, low, everything withers. Granaries are sealed tighter. Prices rise in whispers. Temple offerings shrink. People eat the same bread, the same lentils, but less of them. And they eat them slower. Let us move now upstream to a small hamlet pressed against the hills. Here, a family tends a hillside plot too steep for farming. Instead, they collect wild herbs, reeds, and bitter roots. One daughter, lean and sun-darkened, carries a bundle of sour grass and purslane. They are not delicacies. They are not even nourishing, but they fill space. When boiled with old onions and stale beer, they create a broth thick enough to sip and forget the emptiness. Her father roasts insects over a flame. Locusts, mostly, dried, salted. Their legs are pulled off first. Their bodies crack when chewed, releasing a dry burst of earth and air. He claims they're good for the joints. In another house, far from the hills and closer to the city, a merchant curses under his breath. His date shipment is spoiled. The fruit, once sticky and sweet, has collapsed into brown mush. Flies have laid eggs beneath the skins. He considers trying to dry them again, perhaps spread thin in the sun. But the stench is already rising. He will have to sell them as animal feed if he's lucky. A priest from the temple passes by and pauses at the smell. He says nothing, but raises an eyebrow. The merchant bows, apologizes, promises better stock next week. Reputation, like bread, grows stale quickly. Within the temple walls, meals are being prepared not by necessity, but by ritual. A young initiate grinds spices beside a fire. Dried coriander, cumin, and caraway, not for flavor, but for ceremony. The offering loaves are shaped into perfect triangles with reed stamps brushed with milk. They will be left untouched before the gods, then quietly reclaimed, dried, and reused in soups or stews by the temple cooks. Even sacred food, it seems, does not go to waste. But in the priest's private chamber, a more indulgent meal waits. Goat cheese, rare and soft. Figs, fresh from a southern garden. Bread made of wheat, not emmer, smooth, white, without grit. He eats slowly, deliberately. Each bite is small. He has known hunger before in his childhood. He never forgets it. But he has also learned restraint. Rich food is not to be trusted. Even the finest meal can rot from within. He leaves half the cheese untouched. He will bury it later as an offering. In the streets below, a group of children chase one another, laughing in the dust. One carries a cooked beet in his hand, still warm from the fire. He bites into it, red juice staining his chin. It is soft, earthy, sweet in a way that bread never is. His friends gather and he breaks it in half to share. They eat quickly, hungrily, as if the flavour might vanish before it reaches their tongues. They do not know where the beet came from. A festival, perhaps, or a kind neighbour. It doesn't matter. In that moment it is enough. As the sun reaches its peak, everything slows again. The village settles under the heat. Fires are tamped down, pots covered, people rest in the shade. Their bellies are never full, not truly, but they are not empty either. They float in a space between, and in that space they continue. They endure, they hope, not for feasts, not for change, but for just enough to rise again tomorrow, grind again, stir again, chew again, because this is Egypt, and this is food. The afternoon fades slowly, as if reluctant to let go of the day. Light settles on the fields like dust, muted and warm, stretched across the backs of farmers still bent in labour. The river glows faintly, more bronze than blue, and the wind moves lazily through the reeds as if even the air has grown tired. In the village, the hour between toil and meal begins, that familiar heavy pause where bellies stir and minds wander toward pots, toward fire, toward the hope of something edible. In one modest courtyard, a woman tends to a shallow pan placed carefully over glowing coals. Inside the pan, crushed beans, mashed with salt and boiled until soft, now being thickened with breadcrumbs from loaves 2 days old. She stirs carefully with a flat stick, watching the consistency change with each motion. There is no oil to fry with, no butter to enrich, only heat, salt and time. Her youngest daughter crouches beside her, eyeing the pot with quiet anticipation. The smell is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, only familiar, the scent of sustenance, of another day survived. The woman shapes the mixture into small patties and sets them onto the hot stone beside the coals. They hiss faintly. She listens to that sound. It is one of the few small pleasures cooking offers her. The crisping of the crust, the suggestion of texture. Tonight's meal will have form, not just mush in a bowl. She smiles faintly, a rare victory. Elsewhere, in a merchant's home, a boy coughs violently into a cloth. His mother sits at his bedside, a shallow dish of barley water and date syrup resting on a stool beside him. The syrup is medicinal, said to soothe the throat and ease the stomach. She stirs it slowly, watching the colour swirl. Her son's face is pale, his lips cracked, his eyes flutter between fever and sleep. She suspects it was the fish. He had eaten greedily 2 nights ago. Dried tilapia rehydrated in beer and garlic, fried in a pan that hadn't been cleaned thoroughly. The fish had smelled off, but her husband said nothing and the boy was hungry. They all were. Now she prays quietly to Sekhmet, goddess of healing. Not with incense or chanting, just a thought, a whisper, a hope passed from mother to deity, worn thin from repetition. Let us move again across the rooftops of this small town to a workshop where potters shape the vessels that hold the very meals others suffer through. A man presses his thumb into the neck of a jar, forming the lip that will later hold beer. Another shapes a shallow bowl for lentils, its edges slightly warped. The clay is warm from the sun, soft in his hands. Nearby, a half-dozen pots dry on a wooden rack, ready for firing. The air smells of earth, wet and ancient. He's been making these shapes for years. Vessels for grain, for stew, for oil, for offerings, but he rarely eats from the ones he keeps. His bowls are chipped, rough, old. The finer pieces are for temples, for sale, for wealthier homes. Sometimes he wonders what they hold when they leave his hands. Milk, perhaps. Honey. Wine. He's never tasted wine. The one time he sipped beer from a temple cup, left over from a cleaning job, it was sweeter than anything he'd ever had. Rich, dark, clearer than the thick, sour mash he's known all his life. He dreams of that cup sometimes, of lifting it to his lips again. Back in the heart of the village, a scribe returns home from a long day of record-keeping. His hands are ink-stained, his eyes tired. He sets down his writing board and greets his wife, who hands him a cup of beer. He drinks it slowly, savouring even its bitterness. Theirs is a small house, but a clean one. He is fortunate, he knows this. Their dinner is already prepared, lentils as always, spiced with a bit of dried garlic. The bread is from the previous morning, stale but not yet hard. He tears it carefully, dips it into the stew, chews without complaint. He remembers the census reports from earlier that day. Grain yields were down, floodwaters receded too soon, tax collectors would be strict. He had seen the numbers, he had written them himself. And yet, even knowing this, he eats quietly, because worry cannot feed a stomach. Only food, whatever food there is, can do that. In a different part of the city, inside a perfumed estate with painted walls and mosaic floors, a nobleman watches his servants prepare a dinner that few would see. A goose, slow roasted, grapes on a woven tray, a clay dish of pounded almonds mixed with dates and rolled in honey, flatbread, soft and white, free from grit. Fresh herbs. He sits alone. He smells the food, but does not eat. His stomach has turned again, as it often does now. His physician told him to avoid salt, to eat fewer figs, to chew slowly. But none of it helps. The food, perfect in appearance, rich in taste, turns to stone inside him. He misses the meals of his childhood. Plain bread, lentil mash, rough beer. They made him feel something. This food, this wealth has made him hollow. He sends the tray away untouched. The servants will eat it later quietly in a darkened room. As night descends, fires are stoked across the land. In some homes, pots bubble. In others, flames lick empty clay, waiting for scraps. But everywhere there is movement of hands, of mouths, of breath, because food must be made even when it fails to nourish. And through it all, one truth remains. In Egypt, eating is not an act of joy. It is an act of endurance. Night falls slowly over Egypt, soft and quiet like ash. The last glimmers of sunlight dissolve into the desert, and a hush settles across the valley. The Nile flows black and patient, moving with the calm of something ancient and all-knowing. Along its banks, lamps are lit one by one. Tiny flames in the dark, illuminating courtyards, narrow streets, and sleeping fields. And inside the homes, the last meals of the day are eaten. Not much has changed from the morning. A crust of bread soaked in water, a bowl of lentils scraped clean, a few olives maybe if someone traded wisely, one last sip of warm, flat beer. A quiet thank you spoken not to anyone in particular, but to the idea of having eaten. In one house, an old man leans against a wall, legs folded beneath him. He chews a piece of dried onion with difficulty. His teeth are worn smooth, his jaw aches, but he's lived long enough to know that the pain of eating is still better than the ache of hunger. Across from him, his granddaughter sits with her knees to her chest, picking at her bread with her fingernails. She dips each piece into a clay bowl of crushed fava beans, now cold, thick and sticky. The lamp beside them flickers. "Was food always like this?" she asks quietly. The old man does not answer at first. He stares at the wall, at the patterns the flame casts on it, as if waiting for the shapes to answer for him. Then he exhales, deeply. "Yes," he says, "sometimes worse." She nods slowly, not with understanding, but with resignation. It is not a question that expects comfort. In a nearby temple, the evening rituals have ended. The sacred bread offered to the gods has been cleared away. The priests retire to their quarters, where a more refined meal awaits them. Lentils dressed with coriander, wine poured carefully into polished cups, small loaves shaped by experienced hands. The youngest priest whispers a prayer before eating. Not for the food, for the land. He has seen the river recede early this year. He has seen the records from the granaries. He has seen the growing mould on the lesser offerings. He eats slowly, tasting not the food, but the weight of knowing. Elsewhere, in a wealthier district, a banquet is ending. The guests recline on cushions, hands stained with oil and honey. The air is thick with smoke and perfume. Music has faded into distant notes. Trays are being cleared. Half-eaten dates, meat bones, bread smeared with fruit paste. One guest sits apart from the others. A scholar. He dips a piece of soft bread into a bowl of mashed garlic and coriander, then lifts it to his lips. "This is what the dead dream of," he says aloud, half to himself. A servant pauses. The scholar laughs softly. "Not the spices, not the sweetness, just the act of chewing without fear." The servant does not understand, but he nods respectfully, because respect is owed to those who speak of the dead. The scholar eats another bite. He thinks of tomb inscriptions, of eternal banquets carved into stone, of geese and oxen offered to ghosts, of perfect fruit, perfect drink, perfect bread. He knows those images were never real, not in life, not even in memory. They were wishes, carvings of what might be, what never was. The dead did not eat better than the living. They only dreamed it. As the night deepens, across the land, people lie down in silence, some with full stomachs, most with not enough. A mother watches her son sleep, his breath shallow but steady. She remembers the first meal she ever made for him, crushed beans and barley broth. He had cried. He hadn't liked the taste. She had smiled anyway. Now, years later, she makes the same meal, and he eats it without complaint. And that is how Egypt teaches you to love food, not through flavour but through necessity, to love it because it is there, to love it even when it hurts. In the royal kitchens, a loaf is being prepared for a morning ceremony. It is shaped into a lotus, dusted with caraway, pressed with a sign of eternal life, a symbolic gift to a god who does not eat. The cook places it carefully into a clay oven, watching the heat rise, watching the dough crack and blister. She thinks of her father who died with his belly empty during a flood season long ago. She thinks of how he used to chew his bread so slowly, as if trying to make it last longer in his mouth. She thinks of how little has changed. The bread finishes baking. She places it on a tray of offerings, next to dried dates, salted fish, and beer. It will sit in a sanctuary. It will be burned or buried or eaten by priests. But in the carving beside the altar, the god receiving it smiles. And maybe that is enough. Maybe in this land where food is sacred, bitter, scarce, and unkind, the idea of food, the dream of it, is what sustains the soul. Because Egypt endures, and so do its people, one loaf at a time.